Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about something that can sound helpful, but often can work also against us, and that's pressure. Now, pressure doesn't normally show up as something that's looking negative. In fact, it can sound responsible, it can sound committed. When you hear yourself saying things like, I need to be stricter, I can't mess up with this time I've got to get it right. And on the surface, that can sound very much like motivation. But what we're going to explore today is that pressure might not be that at all. Um, it might not be motivation. In fact, what if it's tension? And what if the tension that you're experiencing is the very thing that can be slowing you down? Now, this isn't about you being lazy. It's not about you lowering your standards. It's about understanding how the human system actually works. Because when you understand that, you stop fighting yourself. The war comes to an end. A few months ago, I went with my sons and a friend on a tuk-tuk challenge in Sri Lanka. So we went driving these two tuk-tuks. And men being men, we got into some situations where we raced each other. And we were doing about, I think, about 500 miles, maybe a bit further, around Sri Lanka. And at certain times, we were racing, if we're honest. And one time, uh, my sons came past me in the other tuk-tuk, and I could not keep up, and I could not understand why. It was only when we stopped did I realize that I actually had the handbrake still partially on. Why is this relevant? Well, the tuk-tuk still moved. It still went forward. We still arrived where we were meant to, but everything was much harder than it needed to be. You could hear the engine straining. It was maxed out. The fuel would have burned faster. The journey we were on felt a lot of effort. And that's what pressure does inside the body. Now, with pressure, you can still lose weight. It just feels heavy. It feels rigid. It's hard work. And the challenge with that is it's often unsustainable because your system is under strain. Now, for those of you that have been around like minds for some time, know that my big interest is not in just people losing weight or getting into better shape. It's sustaining that. That's the crucial thing. Everything is about sustainability. So the important part is that when you create internal pressure with things like thoughts around I must get this right, I can't fail, I need results quickly, the nervous system doesn't interpret that as motivation. It actually interprets it as a threat. And when the body senses threat, it does exactly what it's designed to do. It heightens appetite. Um, you get cravings because the body's saying we need some quick energy, and it'll hold on to any stored energy, i.e., fat. It will reduce all non-essential output. Now, none of this is because you're weak, none of it's because you lack discipline. It's because the system is intelligent. And to the system, pressure equals stress, and stress equals protection. And protection is the opposite of release. So when someone says, I don't understand why I'm trying harder, but everything seems more difficult, it's because often the answer isn't effort, it's tension. So when you're pushing, when you're pushing to achieve something, and it creates all sorts of challenges, both mind and body. In weight loss, it's very specific. You override your hunger cues. You can also do the opposite. You can override fullness signals. You can ignore tiredness. You criticize yourselves for what is natural fluctuations, things going up and down. It's not linear, it's not perfect. And one of the worst ones, you start measuring your self-worth against the scales. And the internal dialogue, the thoughts, the thinking that's going on in your mind tightens everything. See, tension doesn't create clarity, it creates noise. Cravings will feel louder. Decisions will feel more urgent. Um, Food has an emotional charge to it. It's like trying to think clearly while someone else is shouting in the room. Now, you can do it, but it's exhausting. And eventually, the system will push back. Now, that's not to sabotage you, for those of you that think about self-sabotage, but it's to rebalance. And that's really important. You see, it's seeing it as a threat, so it has to do something about it. Now, when you soften the pressure, it doesn't mean you remove commitment. You just soften the force. And when you do that, something shifts. Eating, for example, can become much calmer. Uh, Things seem to become less dramatic, and then cravings reduce their intensity. Energy flow begins to get steady, and the body stops bracing, it loosens. And that can be really important. And nothing extreme has changed. Calories didn't suddenly half, exercise didn't double, the brakes just came off. And when the brakes come off, you don't have to push harder. Progress becomes steadier. And it's the steadier progress that's really sustainable. That's the key. So, softening pressure is not about lowering standards. See, pressure says, if I do this perfectly, or sorry, incorrectly, if I don't do this perfectly, I've failed. Whereas looking at another way, commitment would say, I'm learning, I'm adjusting, I'm staying with it. Pressure's tight. Commitment is just steady. Pressure is urgent, whereas commitment's constant. And when you really look at it, and you don't have to delve that deeply, pressure often comes from fear of not being enough, which could be one of the biggest underlying challenges of people not sustaining the results they achieve. And commitment comes from clarity of direction. And clarity will always create better decisions. See, you're on a journey, and it's better if the journey is relaxing and easy to follow. You just need a bit less force. Try this. Um, Notice when you're pushing yourself. Maybe it's when you're expecting the scales, and when you go on the scales, you expect them to drop faster, or being very rigid with the food rules you have, or judging yourself for feeling hungry, or forcing workouts when you're knackered, when you're exhausted. Just notice it and then ask yourself, what happens if I ease off by 10%? Not 100%, not 100%, just 10%. Um, what happens if you speak to yourself slightly more calmly? What happens if you allow one meal to be neutral instead of perfect? You're not judging the meal to be exact. And what happens if you trust the process instead of forcing it? Often that small softening is enough for the system to settle. And when your system settles, fat loss becomes a lot easier. And it's not because you tried harder, but it's because you stop fighting yourself. I suppose, in summary, the big takeaway here is your body isn't responding to your willpower, it's responding to your state. And pressure creates state of tension, and tension slows release, whereas calm allows flow. So you can go lightly, you can stay committed, but ease the handbrake. And you might find that progress was never about pushing harder, just about letting go a little. So until next time, try and see if you can notice when you're gripping and just experiment with softening, taking it easy, being a bit more relaxed and seeing what happens. Thanks very much.